You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, you are looking live at the live pod that isn't actually live. We are taping this Saturday morning after Notre Dame beat Indiana 27-17 from the Smith family condo. This is going to be a little bit different than normal, as you can see, because we're not in our normal space. Actually, now that I think about it, Luke, you and I have been doing shows together for what, like 5 years? Yeah. This is the first time we're doing it in person, and this is already take two. We screwed up the first one, but here we are now. Notre Dame won 27-17. Luke, all day you were saying this didn't have to be close. And honestly, for the most part, despite the fact that Notre Dame only won by 10, it wasn't particularly close.
It didn't have to be close. And the reason I had such strong conviction in that is I just knew we had better players. And if you take away the last 87 seconds where Kurt Cignetti decided to stop being – well, actually, I would argue he continued being a coward by going for it as Notre Dame's playing prevent defense. Just a dominant performance. Indiana never stood a chance. And I really felt that way pretty much since Notre Dame turns ball over. Xavier Watts immediately gets it back for him. And then the next play, J Love goes to the house, 98 yards. And it's kind of like, this is a wrap.
It was a weird start to the game and honestly a nightmare for us getting in. So we were both at the game. The atmosphere was incredible. The tailgating, everything in the lead up to it was amazing. And then personally, I had a nightmare of a time getting in. So I walked in. The first thing I see, literally walk through, go into my seat. Leonard throws an interception. Watts follows it up immediately with his interception. And then Jeremiah Love, that touchdown run happens right in front of our face. One of the most fun moments I think I can ever recall in that stadium. We've had a lot to celebrate. But from that moment, you kind of knew, like, okay, whatever happened at the start of the game, that was just weird. Now Jeremiah Love, like, for a guy who apparently has the flu, that's what we're hearing. I mean, he hit that second step and he was gone. And from that point on, Notre Dame just handled him the whole game. I don't want to say dominated because they didn't really dominate. They left a lot of points on the board and they definitely have some things to clean up, but they were in control of the entire game. And even though they only won by 10, I mean, I don't know. Did you ever feel legitimate pressure that Indiana was ever going to win?
No, I really didn't because they couldn't do anything. I mean, when Notre Dame got home on Curtis Rourke, he was a sitting duck back there. It honestly felt like a lot of our regular season games where it's like halfway through the second quarter, it's like, all right, can we end this? Like, obviously the atmosphere was a lot better. The crowd was truly deafening at the start of the game. I was really impressed, but it felt like we were playing like I hate to say this, but like a Virginia or a Wake Forest, honestly, for most of that game. It's like Indiana was wildly outmatched and Notre Dame dominated that game and frankly, as you said, left a lot of points on the field still. So there's definitely room to improve. There's some injuries that I know are a little bit worrisome. We'll see how those trend. But all in all, you can't ask for a whole lot more. Our first college football playoff home game ever.
Yeah, so there's obviously a ton of things we need to talk about. One, the actual performance from Notre Dame, because I feel like even though Notre Dame controlled them, I think it's safe to say that they didn't play anywhere near their best. There's a lot of really good things. I mean, the defense played lights out for the majority of the game. Al Golden, masterclass yet again. It's what we've come to expect. And I think everything that Mike Shanahan, the Indiana offensive coordinator, was trying to do, Al Golden had an answer for. I'm looking at it now. They held Indiana to 63 rushing yards. I mean, Rourke ended up with 215 passing yards, but most of that was window dressing at the end. But let's talk about the environment for a little bit because this was the first ever home playoff game. Everyone who cares about college football was watching that game. Love starts it off with a scoring, but like the atmosphere was incredible. I think Notre Dame as a whole did a great job. You said it was deafening at the start. You still had your random weird Notre Dame in-game moments like the squirrel thing. We don't have to get into that because that didn't come through on TV. But I thought Notre Dame did a fantastic job with the exception of getting into the stadium. That was a terrible experience for me. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's just because we were right by the tailgate lots and there was a ton of Indiana fans, but like I tried to get in the stadium at 7 Eastern. I missed Notre Dame coming out of the tunnel. And like I said, the first thing I saw was the Riley Leonard interception. But overall, we're going to put that to the side. What did you think of Notre Dame and how they handled like the entire day?
Well, actually, I'm going to take a step back to Friday first because Thursday first, because we get into town on Thursday night, go to a local hotel bar, and there is this band of 70-year-olds playing. They have a smoke machine and a tambourine that they're just kind of jamming out on. And there aren't a lot of people in this hotel bar, but sitting at the table next to me is Ryan Clark and his wife and daughter, father of starting nickel Jordan Clark. And this 75-year-old guy gets right in Ryan Clark's face and just starts belting out the words to what's going on. And Ryan Clark was singing along right with him, to his credit. But so once that happened, I was like, all right, people are engaged this weekend. And you get to walk around campus yesterday morning, and the snow's falling. The dome looks incredible. It was a really special atmosphere. And then once you got into the actual stadium, which I will agree, I had some difficulty getting in, and I went in at like 6:15. So it took me probably 15 minutes, and there was some guy in line trying to claim like this is why they're not going to have home playoff games anymore. They're not equipped to handle it. I'm like, you're an idiot. But but outside of that, it was awesome in there. I stood the entire game. There was nobody talking about like you need to sit down. It was an engaged crowd, and it was a lot of fun.
Safe to say there was no red invasion. Yeah, nothing even close. And I was on the Indiana side. I will give credit. Indiana fans showed up to South Bend. There was a ton of red in the tailgate lots. I was with my friend who went to Indiana, but in the stadium, like, come on. It's exactly what we said. I said 80-20 max. I don't even think it was close to that. And it was a great environment for Notre Dame. You could tell that they had prepared for this for a really long time. Like, there was all kinds of stuff set up on campus and the area around it. They were ready for this playoff game. They were prepared. And honestly, shout out to the fans, because I think like we've been critical of the Notre Dame Stadium experience before, but when it's a big game like this, and there really hasn't been a big game of this magnitude, like you could kind of sense that as well. Like this season, I think the home slate was pretty rough, and probably the biggest home game was Louisville, and that game was on Peacock. So like they had really one chance to go all out this year, and I thought they absolutely did. The crowd was amazing. I thought everything that they had going around the stadium was awesome. Game day was there. It just felt like they knocked it out of the park, and it was great to set the tone for the college football playoff, because we got 3 more games coming up today, and I feel like Notre Dame kind of set the standard. Like this, even though the game probably wasn't the most exciting, I think Notre Dame really set the bar high for what a home playoff game should look like.
Absolutely, especially when I think you consider that about an hour from now they're going to be kicking off in Happy Valley, and there's thousands of tickets still available for this SMU Penn State game. So Notre Dame, I mean, there's a reason ESPN wanted to kick off the college football playoff at Notre Dame. It's because it's such an iconic venue, and because they knew the fans would be starving for something like this. But you're right. It was just terrific all around, even the tailgate lots. I mean, I got to shout out the orange van here. We had a live Christmas tree and a Burl Ives snowman on top of the van with Christmas lights. Like, so you weren't tailgating in the pitch dark that way. That was really nice. It was a very festive day, and I think everybody involved had a great time besides those people from Wilmington.
That's true. So we talked about the environment. Let's talk about the actual game. I think the biggest takeaway for me, the defense is it's as advertised. And there were maybe some concerns. Like I honestly thought going into the game that IU would probably score early. I felt like they've had 2 weeks to prepare. Notre Dame has been a little susceptible to giving up some points at the beginning of a game. That did not happen. Notre Dame's defense set the tone from the very beginning, and IU had nothing going from the whole game. The offense left a ton of points on the board. We can get into the specifics, the concerns about Love's health or his status going into Georgia. I thought Riley Leonard played well overall, but they just left a lot of points on the board, which is disappointing. But we've talked about this defense so much this year, and to do it against an offense that had been so efficient, they're so methodical, to just shut them down the entire game, to the point where Curt Cignetti, the Indiana head coach, after the game said, I punted because the offense was not doing anything. Even though the offense has some concerns, that is a national championship level defense, and Notre Dame's going to have to ride them every single game going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is actually what makes the last 87 seconds of that game so annoying, because the defense did not deserve those last 2 touchdowns. Just Cignetti just being a tool, for lack of a better term. What are you doing, man? And I'm glad to see that the rest of the internet kind of agrees with me on that take. It's not just me, the meat-headed fan here. That was just a horrible performance from him. But I agree. The defense was dominant. They tackled so well in space. They were clearly so much faster than Indiana, too, just beating them to the edge every time. And that's great to see in a playoff setting, because now, as we were kind of talking about last night, you get an opportunity to go and play Georgia, who is kind of the gold standard for athleticism and just overall programs the last 5-6 years. So this is kind of what you sign up for, is to play in games in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, like this one against Georgia.
Yeah, no one's going to change their perception about Notre Dame football because of a win over Indiana. Like, that's what they were supposed to do. Notre Dame had more talent. They're just a better football program historically and currently than Indiana, and they played like it. They won 27-17, but like, if you want to be Georgia, that's what you have to do. You have to dominate teams who are not as good as you, and Notre Dame did for the most part. And we're going to talk more about the Georgia game. Like, we'll get to that, but I do want to stick on this Indiana game because there are a couple of performances that stand out. I'm looking at the stats right now. Xavier Watts leads the team in tackles with 10. Next up is Jordan Clark, Jack Kaiser, and Nan Schuler, who all had 5. Like, I don't know what more you could say about Xavier Watts. The fact that he got that interception in the beginning, it felt right that Watts would get that first interception. And there's being in the right place at the right time, and then there's Xavier Watts. Like, he just has a knack for being around the ball. But another player I want to give some love to, Jordan Clark, played a phenomenal game. And if there was any tension there at the end when Indiana scored and they were going for 2, Jordan Clark came through, made a great play. That really sealed the game, but that wasn't his first great play of the game. Like, I just thought it was probably his best game of the season, and really all of Notre Dame's defensive backs showed up when they needed to.
They really did. And I agree. I think that probably was Clark's best game of the season, which was nice to see because I think he was a little bit banged up in that SC game. So maybe these last couple of weeks helped having time off. And Don Schuler flying all over the place, really just like, you can't say enough about him. But to have Clark show up in a game like that where you really needed him the way Indiana tries to play offense, that was awesome. So definitely glad that happened. Good way to recognize that there.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. There really is nothing quite like the hype and atmosphere of being at a sporting event. I can't tell you how much fun I had last night at the game, all thanks to Gametime. And Gametime is a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for all of your favorite live events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used Gametime to go to a Lakers game a couple weeks ago, had an awesome time. Plus, it's the perfect place to buy tickets for your friends and family as the priceless gift during the holiday season. My favorite thing about the app is you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and then you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Plus, the all-in pricing shows your total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Game time. I've got to take. I think Leonard Moore as a true freshman is better than Benjamin Morrison was as a true freshman, which is crazy because Benjamin Morrison finished off his freshman year with 7 picks in 4 games or something insane. Leonard Moore is unbelievable. It's not just his coverage. He tackles so well for a defensive back who, he's a true freshman. If he was a senior tackling as well as he does now, it would be impressive. And the fact that he's this good this early on in his career, I just think about in fall camp when Benjamin Moore said, Leonard Moore is going to be better than me. He's going to have a better Notre Dame career. I thought it was insane. I thought he was just kind of blowing smoke, but he might be right.
He might be. And I think like the pronounced difference is obviously the ball production that Morrison had that you alluded to. But part of that might just be like they don't really throw at Leonard Moore that much anymore. And when they do, it's pretty much an incomplete pass every time. So I guess Benjamin Morrison wasn't just being the humble servant leader there. He might have been telling us the truth about that because that was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the stats right now. Shout out to Greg Flamong. He posted this on Twitter. This is what Indiana did when throwing at Leonard Moore last night. 1 of 7, 17 yards, 2.4 yards per attempt, 39.6 passer rating.
Yeah, that's okay.
And he was the best corner, really, like just against USC. That was probably his best game of the season. To then follow it up against an Indiana passing attack that all year had been really, really good. And we said going into this game, like Notre Dame is going to have to win in man coverage because if they do that, then Indiana's RPO game, they're going to force them into running plays. And even though Notre Dame has had some moments this year where you're like, the run defense hasn't been as good, that was not the case. Indiana had nothing doing running the ball. And a big reason why is because the cornerbacks and specifically Leonard Moore. And also, great bounce back game for Christian Gray. Happy for him. I feel like, we've talked a lot about the defensive backs. Is there anyone else on the defense you feel like we need to spotlight?
I think just the obvious, right? The defensive line, I thought, did play pretty well. It was nice to see Bryce Young get a sack. Hopefully he's okay. Of the injuries, that was the one I think I was least concerned about, to be honest, because it seemed like he maybe just got a stinger and bounced up. But Riley Mills is playing really well prior to getting injured. I thought Jalen Sneed played a pretty good game too. Drake Bowen, you point to a guy in the defense, probably had a pretty good day. That's how it felt. Just they were way faster and more athletic and making more plays than Indiana was.
All right, quick note on the Riley Mills injury. So after the game, Marcus Freeman talked to Scott Van Pelt of ESPN. This was his quote about the status of Riley Mills. Quote, "There is optimism. I won't get into details on what they told me, but it sounds like it's not season ending. We just got to get him right here in the next 10 to 11 days and get him ready for the upcoming contest down in New Orleans." So, look, you and I have talked before about Marcus Freeman talking about injuries. That doesn't sound great. Just that's how I interpret it. And that'd be a big blow because he was phenomenal in this game. Like he didn't really light up the stat sheet or anything, but when you're a defensive tackle, that happens a lot. I felt like he had a huge impact on the game. Howard Cross back. He was a factor as well. The Bryce Young sack early on was awesome. He is such a stud. He's going to be so good. I got nervous when he went down just because, it kind of felt like another injury, but you seem to think that he's going to be okay.
I did because I saw kind of what happened too as he was rushing the passer, and it looked like just a stinger. He got up pretty quickly too. Yeah, he was getting up, and the trainers told him to get back down, and then he got up. He seemed to be all right. Now, maybe I'm dead wrong. I've been wrong before on this. I will say, just like as an aside, and maybe as a good transition to the offensive side of the ball, this is going to sound crazy, but I said this to multiple people, like, on Jeremiah Love's 98-yard run, it didn't feel like he broke away from the defense like he normally does, and he still ran 98 yards for a touchdown. So I took that as he's not healthy, but whether it's the knee or whatever. It turns out he just had the flu, according to his dad, who tweeted that out on Twitter. So if that's the case, I don't really know what else you can say about that guy. There was the stiff arm play that was just abusive, straight up. But what a gutty performance from him, and really just a play that sparked the entire night.
Like Notre Dame Stadium has had so much history, so many great players to play there. That's going to go down as one of the greatest plays in the history of Notre Dame Stadium. That's not even hyperbole. That was unbelievable. When that happened right in front of us. And as soon as he gets that step, my good buddy Jeff Melsheimer just goes, he's gone. And then there was this tidal wave of people just pushing, everyone's falling over because they were so excited watching him streak down the sideline. And when you watch the replay, you're right. It's not like he slows down, but he's looking up at the video board like, are they going to catch me? Clearly they weren't going to catch him, but you're right. He didn't have that same burst, but he still had some great plays.
Did you see what he said post-game?
Yeah, he's like, they're not going to catch me.
Yeah, I was watching on the video board.
They're not going to catch me. To have that kind of confidence in the middle of a play is pretty incredible. So Jadarian Price got in a lot. He led the team in carries with 11. Actually, he was tied with Riley Leonard. And honestly, for the most part, Notre Dame did not run the ball outside of that outside of that run by Jeremiah Love. Notre Dame only averaged 2.9 yards per carry. Indiana had one of the best rushing defenses in the country, so we knew that it could be a struggle. But you have that run. You can't just take that away. That's what they needed. They need one breakaway touchdown run, and they got it. But are you concerned at all about the fact that Notre Dame was not able to run the ball with the exception of that one play?
Not particularly, for a couple of reasons. One, Indiana did have a good defensive line and had been pretty good against the run all year. I mean, Ohio State really didn't run the ball very well against them. Now, part of that, I think, was due to the fact that Ohio State had 3 new starting offensive linemen in that game, but nobody's really ran the ball that well on Indiana. And I know that the numbers suggest they didn't have a great game, but Riley Leonard's own legs were huge on a number of plays, picking up first downs, just getting positive yardage. And to be honest with you, I thought Aeneas Williams had a really good game too, out of the backfield, not only running the ball on a couple plays, but catching the ball out of the backfield, like some shoestring catches for first downs. So just getting that level of production from your running backs, even when the ground game isn't necessarily going the way that you're accustomed to, I thought that was notable and still a solid performance from that backfield.
Aeneas Williams finished the game with 4 carries, 24 yards, but he also had 4 catches for 15 yards. And you're right, he had some nice plays along him 9. And the fact that he's a true freshman getting these kind of reps in a college football playoff game tells you how much trust the coaching staff has in his ability. But what did you think about Riley Leonard? Because he finished the game 23 of 32, 201 yards passing, had that bad interception to start the game, had 1 touchdown pass to Jane Thomas. Good for him getting in the end zone too. And he honestly should have had another touchdown pass to Jordan Faison, but instead he just ran it in for himself on the next play. But overall, I thought he made smart decisions. There was a couple plays where you're like, man, someone was open here or there, but it was like a classic Riley Leonard game. He avoided pressure. He made some plays. Also noteworthy, Rocco Spindler missed the majority of the second half, or maybe all of the second half. Sam Pendleton came in at right guard. Have not heard any status, at least I haven't, on Rocco Spindler's status. So that's something to monitor going forward. But the one thing that kind of was frustrating me throughout this whole game, the snaps were all over the place. Like, thank God Riley Leonard is 6'5", because it felt like there were multiple times the ball was going to sail over his head and he had to make a play. So even though the offense produced at a high level, I would say for most of the game, like they never really had empty possessions. They weren't really clicking. And I guess it's, it kind of felt like we're resorting back to middle of the season with the offense.
Well, to be honest with you, like I made the point earlier about how it felt like we were playing Virginia. Elements of what they did on offense reminded me of that Virginia game where they just couldn't punch it into the end zone. But yeah, like obviously the Spindler injury, not ideal. In terms of Riley Leonard, I thought that this is kind of just like the encapsulation of who he is. Like he's just gonna miss guys a lot, like because like there were a number of times where like he just doesn't see a wide open read, and that's just kind of who he is. And I think you have to accept that at this point. We're 13 games into the season. He's a senior in college. Like that's who he is. But some of his just natural ability can help to mitigate some of just the mental or just not being able to see the field mistakes. So all in all, I agree. I think he played pretty well. But like some of these things, he's just you just kind of got to live with it. That's who he is.
I know it sounds a little bit too negative because I mean we don't know the read and all that stuff, like where his progressions are. But overall, I thought he played a good game, and the most important factors in him, like being able to avoid pressure, because Indiana was actually generating some pressure throughout a good portion of that game. I mean, you got to give them some credit as well. That is a good defense. We said that going into it, like, yes, Notre Dame has the more talent than them, but they have some real players on the defense, like Pons, like Kamara. We got to talk about Jordan Faison. 7 receptions, 89 yards. Like I said, should have had a touchdown that long of 44 yards, but he had a drop early and just completely rebounded from that. Played a great game. No one came even close to him in terms of production because he had 89 yards. Second was Bo Collins tied with Jeremiah Love with 18, and he was making plays. It was great to see him use his hands. It's like, okay, good. Like he had that one tough catch where Riley kind of threw it behind him on a play. It was so good to see a Notre Dame wide receiver finally step up when they needed to. And normally, Riley Leonard still distributed the ball around the field, but like, no one has really stepped up in a moment like that since maybe Bo Collins in the Texas A&M game. And it's like, we've been hearing about Jordan Faison. We've seen flashes, but he's never really put a full game together like that as a wide receiver since like the Sun Bowl. And he's been dealing with injuries throughout the season, but like that is the type of difference maker you need on the outside if you want to go far in this playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, and he brings an element to this offense that nobody else really can, which is what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch. And you saw that on that reverse on the kickoff too, where I almost thought he was going to break that one. But that's a unique ability that that only really he has within this offense. But I was just thinking, Notre Dame doesn't have an 100-yard receiver in a game this year, do they?
I don't think so. The last one was like Rico Flores it was Faison, the Sun Bowl.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
I thought Mitchell Evans would have a better game. X factor. Instead, he has 2 catches for 17 yards and a fumble, which almost looked like he did it intentionally, like threw the ball forward. That was kind of a weird play, but the Faison kickoff return. First of all, I loved that call because that Indiana kicker and their whole kicking game was bad. The punter was terrible too, which made Cignetti's like intention of punting all the time just make even less sense because he wasn't even flipping the field well at all. But Notre Dame gets the ball to start the second half. They run a reverse with Jane Harrison, and Faison was so close to breaking that for a touchdown. Like one guy just pulled his jersey back and brought him down to the ground. But I did love the aggressive play call there. Notre Dame was aggressive with their play calling in this game. They did kick a couple field goals. Shout out to Mitch Jeter, man.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
What was that, 49-yarder? Just banged it in.
Yeah.
Right before the half, and you could tell, it was 49 yards. The coaching staff, Freeman was so jacked up. Mitch Jeter was jacked up, and I actually felt a weird bit of confidence, and I've been the one who's been complaining the most about the kicking game and how much of a nightmare it's been, but like kicking at 49 yards, it felt like, okay, there's not really a ton of pressure here. Just boot the damn thing, and he did, and watching his reaction and Freeman's reaction was so cool, and it's like, all right, I'm not saying Money Mitch is all the way back, but like, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the perfect spot for them to try to get him some confidence back to. It's 14-3, end of the half, 49 yards. So it's deep enough where if he misses it, like whatever. And he just banged it. And that was huge. They also ran a fake field goal at one point tonight that I guess was good that it got blown dead because I don't think they would have picked that up. But the bag of fakes just continues to get deeper and deeper, apparently. But yeah, all in all, I thought a pretty solid night from the special teams unit. I know there was the one blocked field goal. Kind of a high snap, low kick, whatever. But outside of that,
Buckner?
It was Buckner on the hold, which begs the question, was that maybe going to be a fake if they had a read they liked? I don't know. But regardless, I think a pretty solid night from the special teams unit.
Today's episode is brought to you by TNT College Football. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back with the newly expanded 12-team format. It is guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So now Notre Dame moves on to face Georgia. This is the game that we've kind of been waiting for all year because you think about all the expectations that this team had going into the season. The schedule was weak.
Yeah.
And even the playoff game, kind of weak in terms of like, who we were playing, what the final score, the outcome, and all that. I have never been more excited to play an SEC team in this spot because this is going to be an absolute battle, but this is the best I've felt about Notre Dame going up against one of these teams ever. Sure enough, like you and I were confident going into that game. Well, I guess Clemson's not SEC, but like that's a little bit different. It's a playoff game, big spot, and then Notre Dame got housed. They got housed in 2012. They got housed in 2020. I never really thought they had a chance in that game, but like, look, Georgia does not have their starting quarterback, which might be a good thing for them, but like, this is kind of the time. It's like, all right, year 3 of Marcus Freeman. This is a measuring stick. I'm not going to say that Notre Dame is going to walk in there and win, but it's more so like we're going to find out what Notre Dame has on New Year's Day in New Orleans.
Yeah, standalone game, 8:45 at night, New Year's Day in the French Quarter. Sign me up for that. This is why you follow this sport, is for games like this. And I agree, it's definitely the most confident or just maybe not confident, most content or like least nervous I've been going into an SEC game because there isn't a ton to lose. And now, obviously, it's a great opportunity beating a backup quarterback to go to the semifinals. I understand that. But this just feels like a let's see what we got kind of moment. And I'm definitely excited for that. I mean, even the last time we played Georgia, which was obviously a very tight game, could have won it. We were like 17.5 point underdogs in that going into that. And I did not feel great going into that because we had just struggled with kind of Louisville and then New Mexico. So it's definitely a different feeling than when we all went down to Athens 5 years ago. That's for sure.
I know. Is it crazy to call it a revenge game? It's not really revenge. I mean, yeah.
Jack Kaiser was on in Howard Cross. But that's it.
Jack Kaiser was on the last team that won a national championship back in '88. That game is going to be such a scene. I can't wait for it. And I'm with you. Like, Notre Dame had to beat Indiana. That was all the pressure was on Notre Dame. They had to win that game. They did it. And I don't really feel like there's a ton of pressure on them going up against Georgia. It's kind of like, I mean, it's in the moment. I'm going to be nervous as hell and I'm going to be excited and all that stuff. But like, I don't feel like this is a game that like they have to win or else the whole season is a disappointment. This is the point of the season where I felt like this is where they needed to get to. And now it's like, all right, let's see what you got. If they get blown out of the water, that does change things, obviously, about the season, the way we look at this team. I don't think that's going to happen. But this is a huge, huge measuring stick for this program because it's like, you know, they're deeper, they're more talented. But Georgia has been the gold standard. Even though this Georgia team isn't like the Georgia of 2021 or just beating the crap out of everyone and they ended up, you know, running away with the national championship, it's still Georgia. This team is awesome. That defense is awesome. And this is going to be one hell of a test for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and like also, I think another angle of this is like this is the first time Notre Dame is going into one of these games against superpower, you know, top 3 team SEC with Marcus Freeman as the head coach. All those games in the past have been Brian Kelly era games, and so Freeman has done a great job getting his teams up for big games, and I'm really fascinated to see what that looks like in New Orleans because this is kind of his first crack at it. I know, obviously, Notre Dame went down at College Station and played A&M. They're not on the same level as Georgia. It's different. A tough place to play, but in terms of the magnitude of the opponent, they really don't compare. So this is going to be fascinating.
Just quickly before we head out here, what do you think that crowd is going to be like in New Orleans? Because it's obviously a little bit closer to Georgia, but there's just so much momentum with the story team. It's funny because like before the game, everyone that we were talking to was like, you know, if they win, would you go to New Orleans? Like, and most people were like, nah, not really. Then Notre Dame beat Indiana. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to New Orleans. Like, I don't personally know. I don't think I will be there, but I know you will be there. And that is, when was the last time Notre Dame played in the Sugar Bowl? Was it 2006 when we got destroyed by LSU? Like, this is going to be such a different game. And I don't know if there's like an early line out, but I saw last week that Notre Dame was favored by 2.5. I think the look-ahead line went down to 1.5, but that's going to be a pick 'em, right? There's no way that Notre Dame goes into this game against Georgia favored. But like, honestly, who cares? Because even though Notre Dame has not had a very stressful season, that is going to be the most stressful 60 minutes, like maybe ever.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the crowd, I think one word is drunk. New Year's Day in New Orleans at 8:45 at night. It's gonna be a scene. And Notre Dame's played in the Sugar Bowl once in my lifetime. I don't know how many times they played in the Sugar Bowl, period. Not a ton, I don't think. I would guess like 5 or 6, maybe. I don't know if you want to look that up and do some research so somebody in the comments doesn't tell me you're an idiot. But I'm excited for it, right? I think there's going to be a lot of Notre Dame fans down there. There will be a lot of Dog fans down there. We know they travel well, but I think it's going to be a scene. And hopefully this mutual respect thing with Georgia goes away a little bit after the last couple of years. No ads being taken out in the Athens newspaper thanking them for their hospitality. So.
Yeah. You know, the one nice thing about that game is it's going to be in a dome.
Yeah.
It was cold last night. I looked like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. When I took off all my clothes.
Flash up a photo?
Yeah, I'll pull up a photo after the fact. So I think I had 18 different layers. I looked in the mirror. I was like, you are not going to be cold for this game. I've been living in Los Angeles for the past few years. I'm not built for the cold anymore. But you know what? I wasn't cold. I feel like I survived the elements, but that game, the last like 2 hours before the actual game started in the tailgate lots, like the wind started to pick up. It was a South Bend night in the late December. It was everything we expected. But the good thing is I don't think it had any actual impact on the actual game. Like, do you think anything changed because of the weather?
Not at all. I think both teams were still kind of able to play at least the way they wanted to. Obviously, Indiana didn't have a ton of success doing that, but it didn't really seem to change much of the game plan or anything like that. And you're right. I was definitely shaking a little bit going in those last 2 hours in the lots, and I that's kind of why I went into the stadium, just to like get in a bathroom and like heat up a little bit for a little bit. But we made it through, and New Orleans will be in a dome. Won't be nearly as cold.
Thank God. All right. It has been about 30 minutes. We've talked about this game a lot. We're going to continue to talk about this game for the next week or so. Personally, I don't know what the show schedule is going to be like with Christmas and everything. I still got to figure that out, because I don't know if I'm ever going to be back in my apartment again. I've got so much travel coming up with Christmas and all that. Also, Luke's girlfriend, Emily's over here. She's being an absolute champ right now, listening to us idiots, letting us do this the morning. It was actually, in a way, we have a live audience. Not only was it the first time that we did one together in person, the first time we had an audience for this one too. She's probably like, oh my God, will these guys ever stop talking so we can get out of here? But we are going to do that. We are going to get out of here. Thank you everyone for tuning in, watching, listening, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. It has been such a fun time. This weekend has been awesome. This is like one of the, it's not over yet. The ride continues. After declaring the season over in early September, somehow it's late December and the season is still going on. So despite all that, we're here. We're going to continue talking about it. But that's going to do it for today. We'll see you whenever. I'll figure that out.